I would like to start with Gregor, because tomorrow on the 10th of March, it's a very important day. Tomorrow we will see the publication of the EU communication on industrial strategy. And everyone, I mean us itself now, what can we expect to see? You have co-written some of the papers, I mean even if discussions are still going on today as I understand, so not everything has been said. What can we expect to see?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to come back to Warsaw. I'm originally from this city, so it's always good to be back. Indeed, many colleagues cannot travel today because of coronavirus. My other colleagues cannot travel because indeed we're putting the last dots in the industrial policy communication that will be published tomorrow. So a big day for us, and I think a big day for European industry. Of course, I cannot tell you in detail what you will see tomorrow, also to keep the suspense and make sure that you will read the communication once it's published, but maybe just a few messages that I would like to pass. So first one is how to read this document, and I think the key tip is to see it in a kind of bigger context still of 100 days initiatives. We talked a lot in the morning about the new Green Deal. That is actually the new growth strategy for Europe. So whatever you're going to see in the coming months, it's related to it. And that's also the case for the industrial strategy. We see in that new industrial strategy as one of the key ways to implement the Green Deal. There is no Green Deal without industry, but also industry needs to take on board the green transformation. So that's one very important aspect. Then I think all of you have seen a couple of weeks ago a big package on data, on AI, on digital stuff. And that's also an important part of what's coming now. So we have the green, we have the digital. Now tomorrow we'll have the new industrial strategy, but it will be published together with some other documents that are also very relevant. So you see two documents on single market. I think Ms. Rodriguez highlighted the importance of single markets, and I can only agree. There is no strong European industry without strong single market, so that's why we also put it together. You will see also a new strategy on SMEs, same as we repeat as our mantra, SMEs are the backbone of European economy, and that's why we want to make sure that also they can be part of the digital and green transformation, so there'll be this part. You also see a new strategy on circular economy, new action plan that will also help Europe to benefit from the opportunities that are brought by the circular economy. So that's the package presented for tomorrow, and then still in the coming weeks you will see a new skills strategy. So people. Indeed, people are important, but and people need to be able to benefit from this transition and from what the new economy can bring. But for that, we need to ensure that people have the right sets of skills. So that's kind of the broader political picture. Now, when it comes to the strategy itself, I think I'm not going to surprise you very much if I would say that the main objectives of this strategy is to be green. It's to use the technologies, especially the digital technologies, and to be globally competitive. So that's the three main objectives of the strategy. And I think it's kind of also summarized well by the story that President von der Leyen was sharing last week. When she was in Davos, she was asked by a big CEO, how would she like to see Europe? Do we want to be a global player or a global playground? And I think the answer is clear for all of us, but that also requires strong action and requires urgent action. To give you some highlights on how to do it, so we see some of the key enablers for this transformation. One already mentioned, so single market. it's one of the key jewels in the EU treasury, but I think its potential, it's still not used enough, especially when it comes to the digital single market as well. So there are still some barriers that are in place, and we have to make sure that we all take necessary efforts and measures to get rid of them. That's also important for member states. That's one thing. Second, the potential of circular economy, seen as a way to be more green, but also seen as a way to be more independent in terms of economic terms, because the more materials we can reuse, the less dependency we have as a European economy. Third thing, competition rules and stated rules. I think very important mechanism that is in place, but might need to be revised, and we might need to see how we can adjust the competition rules that are in place to make sure that there is a level playing field for European companies and companies as such operating in Europe, but also European companies operating globally. So that's an important aspect. There is, of course, issue of technologies and value chains and ecosystems. So the green and digital transformation need new technologies and need new approaches to supporting them and developing them. And last, but of course always most important, money. So there is also issue of financing, of pooling resources and seeing how this transformation can be supported on different levels by different sources of financing. And I think here really the key thing is finding new ways for public-private partnership, because the scale of the challenges ahead is really big, and that also means that we all have to be part of providing financing. So that's what I can tell you today, but I think it's a good teaser again for you to stay tuned for tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you, Gregor. Let me follow up quickly on 2 points you have not particularly stressed in what you said. The first one is a more strategic orientation, because there were ideas being developed on strategic value chains for the future, or strategic value creation networks, as it's also called in the high-level industry roundtable report from last year. What are the next steps here? What can we expect from the Commission side? Because this was a new way of driving EU interests in a global economy, further strengthening areas where we are already very strong, for instance, also in the manufacturing business, on industrial IoT, and also around the digitization. And then also this model of the IPCIs, these important projects of common European interest, which would allow us to pool financing from member states and from private stakeholders there. And microelectronics IPCI is one, batteries is another one. What can we expect in that direction? I mean, it's a very political decision, I mean, what we want to do here, and I know that in the member states discussions have also been going on. What is likely to happen in that area during the coming years?
Yeah, thanks for this difficult but relevant question. Maybe also to wake you up, I will ask the question to the audience. Who here has heard about the concept of important projects of common European interest? Okay, well, at least some of you, but don't blame me because it's quite a technical term, but an important one. So basically, IPCIs are a new concept introduced 2 years ago by the European Commission to ensure that member states and industry can invest strategically in the areas that are important but difficult because of the possible risk involved, so like microelectronics, like batteries, like possibly hydrogen as well. So those areas that really of strategic importance required urgent actions, but where the state's rules that exist might not always be very friendly. So the idea here was to relax the stated rules and make sure that member states can invest in those areas using better conditions. That's one of the elements that we introduced. because of the change in the mind shift that we observed while talking about industrial policy, so we don't talk that much about sectors anymore indeed, but we more and more talk about value chains, and I think all of you understand why. So basically because the nature of economy and industry has changed so much that if we want to be strategic and if you want to see how Europe will perform on a global stage, we have to see where we want to be as a continent, as industry, in terms of those value chains. So that's one of the possible tools that exist to support value chains in Europe, but that's just a selected thing. Of course, stated rules are one thing, but then we have issue when it comes to skills. So how to make sure that we actually have people who can work in those value chains in Europe that have the right set of skills. Then it's about providing financing and pulling different resources, so public money, but also private money. How can we make sure that it comes together and it's spent in an efficient way? It's about regulation, because again, there is a lot of regulation in place that might not be fit for purpose. So how can we ensure that there is a right framework for that? It's basically also about new ways of governance. So one of the things that you can expect in the industrial communication is, again, showing that we talk about partnership, but we also mean it. So you also see a new governance body that will make sure that this idea of value chains and ecosystems is actually also reflected in the way we do policies.
Yeah. And to add maybe one point on that, which is I think also important here in Poland, is that in the EU Strategic Forum, the Polish government participated to the discussion. So I think this is also very good because many member states were present there and also shaped the discussion and the proposals. One other issue I would like to follow up, which is also a more political and a very sensitive one as well, it's the discussion we are having in Europe for the moment on this technological sovereignty, it's called. At least this was the buzzword over the last couple of years, which is not so easy because, I mean, our industry is global and we are all globally intertwined. Even so, we have some restrictions for the moment, but our companies are active all around the world. I think it's necessary probably that companies out of Europe become stronger, but on the other side, we don't want to be protectionist. We don't want to close markets over here because we also are dependent on investors coming from other parts of the world and on partnerships here as well, talking about more cooperation that we need in the future. Can you give us some ideas on in what direction this discussion is going here on technological sovereignty for the moment?
Well, I think that will be also very well reflected in the strategy that will be published tomorrow. As you might know, the new commissioner for industry, Mr. Thierry Breton, who comes from French industry and before was the CEO of Atos, pays a lot of attention to this topic, and I think he also brought interesting insights into our approach to industrial policy. And then also the strategy is being coined kind of jointly also with Vice President Vestager. That also represents a strong take on it. So I think we have learned our lesson from what has happened in the last couple of years in terms of geopolitical developments and our approach to not only technology development but also things related to regulation, state aid, competition rules. And indeed, as you said, we want to be open, but for sure we don't want to be naive. So there is also a set of instruments and new mechanisms that will be presented in the strategy that will answer this challenge.
Okay, thank you, Gregor. We are certainly looking forward to this communication tomorrow. We will all read it, and I guess we will also comment it rather quickly then once we have seen the document. So looking forward to continue cooperation on this one. Let's move on, Jacek. You are representing one of these really global companies. I mean, it's very difficult to say. I mean, Schneider Electric for me in the past always was like a French company, but I mean, your headquarter is based in another part of the world. You are active in very, very many markets. How important actually is this stressed EU internal market for you as a company like Schneider Electric? Is this really of high importance to you, or do you say, we are so diversified? Yes, it's nice to have, but it's not really a very strong asset that we have over here. How do you see it?
Well, it is very important. As you said, Schneider Electric is a European company, and we started and we headquartered in France. We operate globally. But Europe represents a very significant part of our business. So relating to what Grzegorz said is that we really, being a European company, we really believe that Europe should support the single market and should address the issues that we are all facing. I mean, Rada said in her opening speech that we have the environmental, technology, and demographical challenges here on the European market, and we all also see an increasing level of competition between major players, US, China, and Europe. And of course, that competition is seen also by companies like Schneider Electric. We face it competing with other players. And we see it on the market, but we see it also on the, let's say, a legal or legislative framework. So I mean, being European, I really believe that Europe, on one hand, should stay open, but should not be naive. Right now, I think there is an opportunity for Europe to lead against the wave of protectionism that we see starting to take some momentum in some parts of the world. So I believe that supporting the open markets that are really beneficial for European companies is and providing a framework for the European companies to be able to expand globally is really what we're looking for. But on the other hand, we should not be naive. So we as the European company expect that the rules will be fair for everyone, and we should have a legal structure that would help us to, let's say, fight or be protected from unfair competition. And it's a very delicate issue because finding a balance here, of course, the fairness and protection of its own market goes exactly 180 degrees against the openness. So finding a balance is a big issue. Yeah. We also believe that some of these challenges are also big opportunities. I mean, the environmental challenge. Europe has led both in terms of legislation, but also the businesses, all the sustainability or green businesses or circular economy. And I would say this is a big opportunity because this is growing. The big energy transformation that we are all witnessing is also a big opportunity for Europe. Again, it would require cooperation between the industries, providing technologies and products, but also a proper legislative framework. The energy industries are highly regulated in most of the countries. They are strategic, mission-critical infrastructures. So most of the countries make sure that they get enough, let's say, protection from the country administration. And therefore, again, Europe has proven being strong in the combination of legislation and business. I mean, we have set a standard for global mobile telephony by perfecting that area, and I would say on the energy transformation, it's a very, very similar domain. Yeah. We also, I mean, a nightmare for a company like Schneider Electric is, if I can call it, a fragmented policy landscape, where we go from country to country and we face completely different regulations, different norms. And again, everyone who thinks of global industries and modern technologies, we kind of tend to see them totally global. But then if we look at some older industries, the electrical norms, the standards of an electric plug are still different from country to country. They're legacy of the past, but they make operations of companies within the single European market difficult, because then you have to redevelop your solution for every country. So of course, here we're looking for a legislation that would drive this single European market in various aspects, not only commercially, but also in terms of technical norms. And then there is many new regulations really required. Again, I tend to go to the energy market because now it's being really transformed, and that's my field of expertise. But then again, the energy networks in most of the countries, and in Poland especially, are having a big transition in front of them. Again, going from coal-fired power plants, centralized generation, into renewable, decentralized generation of energy. It's a huge transition that requires a lot of investment, both from the companies, but also from the energy providers and the governments. That it requires smart regulation, because, as I said, it's a strategic infrastructure, highly regulated already. And this is also where cooperation between business and both national and European governments are absolutely necessary for the success.
Okay, thank you, Jacek. Let's move to one aspect. I mean, if we talk about Europe's industry strategy, industrial policy, we have heard a lot about the Green Deal this morning already. We are expecting now this communication on the industry strategy tomorrow. We also have this, let's say, ambition to make Europe fit for the digital age, which is one of the major projects of the European Commission, and which is also very important to us in the electro industry overall, obviously. Rada, on artificial intelligence, I think we have realized that discussions at the European level are really at the very beginning, because a lot of different stakeholders, societal stakeholders, industry, politicians are coming together to see how we are shaping the world around AI. What are the rules? What's the regulatory framework that we need? Solving some of the ethical questions, finding answers over here. How do you see this discussion, and how important is the aspect of industrial AI, which is what you have mentioned already before, more what matters also to us, and where many companies are already making their experiences over the last years, and what should we do to put more emphasis also on the industrial AI aspect?
Yes, thank you. So it's really a very important topic, and I try to say it also in my presentation to have very clear the split between industrial artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence, which is mostly related to the human interaction. And for the artificial intelligence, when it comes in industrial application, I would like to start with the definition of what is artificial intelligence, because there are a lot of discussions today, but not everything is very, very factual. So the definition which we, in Orgalim, we are giving to artificial intelligence, it's very similar to one of the high-level expert group on artificial intelligence, and that is computer systems based on algorithm designed by human. And I think that this human approach, or this human-centric approach, is very important. As I said, this definition is very similar to the EU Commission's high-level expert group definition, and in this respect, as defined, we are using, as you said, artificial intelligence already in industry since many years. On the other hand, integrating this, what we have done so far, and evolving that, integrating it also with high-skilled labor, it's a huge opportunity for us, for the industry. And this opportunity, of course, we need to grab and to develop. And to the question, what should we do more, is that the benefits of artificial intelligence in this, as defined with the definition I just gave, the benefits are so big when it comes to all the challenges which we have, Green Deal, so providing the solution to the problem, scarcity of resources in healthcare, etc., that these benefits needs to be much better highlighted in the societal dialogue. So I think that is very important. So we are discussing, and the Commission is discussing about this trustworthy artificial intelligence. I think that is very important. We are totally behind this concept, and we are supporting this concept. But we have to be also clear that the framework needs to be appropriate for the industry. And today, I don't know if everybody knows, there are a lot of pilots going on where the companies, including Schneider Electric, is asked to see if the ethical guidelines given by the Commission last year, if they are fit for the purpose and if they can be used. And the outcome so far is that we need a massive simplification of those guidelines, so that, I mean, it was pretty difficult for us to make it happen in the pilot, but we realized that for smaller companies, small mid-sized companies, it would be even more difficult. So this massive simplification of the guidelines is really requested. Otherwise, the approach is very good.
Okay. Ada, thank you very much. We don't have a lot of time because we have to make up some of the delays there, but nevertheless, I would like to raise one issue which is very important in this digital world. This is trust. And I think it's an issue that we all have to take very serious. And the question to you, Rada, first, but maybe that's also a point where I would like to get Jacek's opinion, and maybe also the one from Gregor from the European Commission side. I mean, what can industry actually do to build trust? Because it's nothing that we can leave to others. We have to do our share. What can we do to provide more trust into digital technologies and, let's say, into these more cooperative network society sharing platform systems in which we are going in the next years, because trust really here is the prerequisite.
Is it for me? What we do already as an industry, I mean, cybersecurity is very much linked to this trust, because people are expecting products and processes which are secure. So we do cybersecurity by design, and I think that is something which the industry is already doing. On the other hand, what we need is what I said before, is we can also contribute to this dialogue, dialogue with the social partners, but also dialogue at a bigger scale. So as a company, we can promote this cybersecurity by design principle. We can have open days where we invite the different stakeholders to see how we are complying with this. And overall, the awareness of what does it mean, cybersecure, the awareness of artificial intelligence, of the benefits, so the opportunity of the digitization rather than the risk with the digitization.
Okay, Jacek, from your point of view, briefly.
Well, trust is enabler of value, and let me be specific. More and more business models are based on extracting value out of information. But even people that have information, they not necessarily have the knowledge necessary to extract the value. So when we see the new business models, there is more and more information sharing to enable value. I'll give an example. Even on the critical infrastructure, on the electrical infrastructure of a country or of an industrial production site, people have that infrastructure to supply their production or citizens or whatever. More and more devices installed on that infrastructure become smart, so they produce more and more information. Converting that information to the value in terms of revenue or in terms of profit, so more sales or less costs, is actually getting more and more difficult, and it requires a lot of expertise. So sharing this information with a specialist company that has a technology and an ability to advise into converting or enabling that information into positive value requires a certain trust, because a lot of that information is sensitive. We talk about technology, but we see that also in the business models. I mean, we as Schneider Electric, we sell a lot of our products through a multi-layer distribution. So an electric plug, before it gets to a consumer, it goes through an electrical installer that is getting it from a distributor that is getting it from us. Sharing the information about so-called sell-out information about who is buying what throughout the value, the value chain of sales also enables to better address the needs of the end user, but also to better fit the technology. Yeah. And again, it requires trust, because many of these players are competing with each other.
We have maybe one best practice, and our CEO has referred to that already in his speech this morning. We have, for the electro industry, put together some guidelines for the responsible use of data and platforms, and that will be taken up further also during the discussion that we have in the second panel. It's available in English and on our website. If you are interested, you can download it. And I would like to close by coming back again to the industrial policy and industry strategy point of view over here, just by giving Gregor the last word. One expectation from you to industry, how you want to see cooperation on these Industry 4.0 industrial policy aspects for the coming years. And the second one, you have raised already the issue of financing, which is very crucial, because we are more pessimistic for the moment on the multi-annual financial framework that we need from 2021 to 2027. It doesn't look so promising for the moment. In all Commission documents are references to this financing and also to the MFF over here and to other programs. So this is really key. What can we do to solve the problem? I mean, you're probably, if you would have the answer, probably you would be the next Commission President here. But what are some ideas on what we can do very briefly? And you have the last word.
Thanks a lot. Again, challenging questions, but I will try to give you my answer. On the first one, I think industry shouldn't forget that we have to do it together. So again, the importance of partnerships when it comes to doing things, and this broad partnership on different levels and in different ways. And I think the example that you just discussed is very interesting and shows that everybody has to do its lesson, right? So the responsibility is on different levels. On the second one, and that is kind of linked to the first question. As you know, actually the discussions now are between member states. I think the initial proposal from the Commission when it comes to the new financial framework was quite good, and of course it's always an issue of finding compromise, but was good. Now it's really for member states, and I think the message that I would like to pass to you is also to reach out to national governments, because it's them that really have to understand that we have to be ambitious as Europe, and it's not only about putting words on paper, but it's about putting money behind those initiatives. So we can talk about Green Deal, we can talk about new industrial strategy or whatever, but it's not going to happen if there won't be enough resources. And yeah, that's the message that you have to also keep on pressing on the national level.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Gregor. I think we all agree that we need these investments into the future, and we hope that with that panel we brought a bit of the Brussels actual policy also here to Warsaw, so to give you a bit an overview on what is currently being discussed and what we can expect, and also to lay the ground for the discussion that is going on then in the second panel, which will be chaired here in a second by my colleague Martin. But for now, I want to thank all the panelists, Rada, Jacek, and Gregor. Thank you very much for coming today over here and for this discussion. And please stay with us. We will continue the stream in a second. Thank you very much.
Thank you.